You guys know that Iran's been sending all of these drones to Russia. And again, I love the Western press, right? At first they said, look at the Russians. They have no money. Their army sucks. They have to go buy drones from Iran. You know those crappy drones the Iranians make? Those drones that suck, that don't kill people like ours do? And then when the drones are being used in Ukraine, and now all of a sudden they're saying, oh my God, these drones are devastating. We got to sanction Iran. They're destroying the country. Which one is it, man? You said they're useless pieces of crap, and now you're saying they're too devastating? Here, I'll show you that, because after the Crimea bridge attack, which the Ukrainian foreign minister admitted was Ukraine was behind that, the Russians, they started striking energy infrastructure inside of Ukraine, and they've been using more and more of these drones that were provided by Iran. So we're talking about the Mohajer and the Shahid. Okay, so these are not even Iran's best drones. They still have even better ones. But let me just show you here. This is an article from Euronews. They say Ukraine war, Kiev is hit with kamikaze drones, sanctions, and Russia's acute logistical problems, right? So they're saying that I think the number was 43. They used 43 of these drones in one day. This is one of the drones, yeah? So the Shahid 136. This is a video released by Iran a while back. It's not from Ukraine. But yeah, I just wanted to show you what's going on here. So the EU is planning to sanction multiple Iranian individuals and entities within the coming days over arms sales to Russia. Okay? So the move comes amid reports that Russia has used Iranian drones to strike civilian targets in Ukraine and may soon receive precision-guided Iranian missiles. And this is, of course, according to U.S. intelligence cited by the New York Times. They're saying Tehran is also sending drone trainers to Russian-occupied Crimea. Officially, Iran has not explicitly admitted that they're giving them drones. They're giving them drones. Okay. Some people will say, well, that's not sometimes they're using a variant of it. Yeah, but it's still a variant of an Iranian drone. And it's no secret that they cooperate together. The move here that they're trying to implement is another round of sanctions on Iran. Okay. So they want to hit 5 Iranian individuals and 3 entities. The new penalties would come on top of sanctions already agreed on Monday against Iran's morality police. So you guys remember these protests, riots that are happening in Iran? They said that it's the morality police who killed Mahsa Amini. And then it went from, let's get rid of the hijab, and now let's get rid of the Iranian government. How convenient for the West and Israel. But they slapped Iran with sanctions over that on their morality police. Which, by the way, is funny, right? I don't hear them sanctioning Saudi Arabia's morality police. And now they're sanctioning Iran over arms sales. And I find this funny because NATO, whether it's the French or it's the British, the United States, they sell weapons all the time. Speaking of Saudi Arabia, they sell them tons of weapons, right? How much did Obama sell them? $115 billion worth of weapons, including cluster bombs. And then Trump did about $300 billion, right? They sell weapons all the time. And if they don't sell them, they'll go and steal them. Like they get rid of Gaddafi, take his weapons and give them to terrorists in Syria. So, now they're mad at Iran giving the Russians drones. I honestly don't even know if they were necessarily given. Because let me explain this. The Iranians and Russians have a partnership that predates the Ukraine war. There's nothing new. Someone, I think it was in the Iranian government, a spokesperson said that their military arrangements and partnerships predates this. So I don't know if he was trying to say that basically they've been giving the Russians these drones or parts of them before the Ukraine war started. And so that basically this has nothing to do with Ukraine. But the other side comes around and says, well, okay, if Iran really is giving them drones, then they're a co-belligerent and we have to go after them as if they are Russia. I mean, this is really funny, All of a sudden now they care about human rights and they care about international law and they care about arms sales and drones. And wow, I wish the EU would have sanctioned the US for all the people they've murdered with drones. They hit weddings, they hit funerals. They even, under Obama, the United States drone striked the funeral of a guy who was killed in a drone strike, killing more people with a drone. I mean, it's sick. It's barbaric. When they say kamikaze drone, let me explain how this works, because these are basically drones that are it's like a V1. Okay, the Germans in World War II, they developed the first rocket engine, and the V1, which looked similar to this, not exactly, but similar. It would basically they'd give it just enough fuel so it would go from the French coast to London, and then it would run out of fuel based on that finite amount, and then it would just crash randomly somewhere and kill people, right? My grandmother was blown up by a V1 in World War II. She survived, but it hit her, right? And it's indiscriminate. It's not controlled. It just lands wherever, and you hear the engine dying because it runs out of fuel, and it explodes upon impact. And then, they came up with the V2. The V2 was the first ballistic missile. And, what the Americans did, they basically went and recruited all these Nazis after the war and got them to work on the space program, right? Even after all they did to London with the V1 and V2s. So, this drone technology is not new. But the thing is that's special about what Iran is doing is that Iran's been under sanctions for decades. And remember, up until the war in Ukraine started, the Iranians were the most sanctioned country by the United States in the world, right? 3,000 sanctions. And again, I'm not saying they didn't suffer. They definitely suffered. Sanctions make people suffer, civilians, everybody. And my point is, though, despite the sanctions, look what they were able to do. They developed ballistic and cruise missiles that are so advanced that Mike Pompeo and Donald Trump and the Israelis were screaming about, oh, why wasn't this included in the nuclear deal? Because it has nothing to do with nuclear weapons, but okay. So they're trying to, back out and, renegotiate a deal they never followed in the first place. So that shows you Iran's defense research, its defense capabilities are very, very potent, very good. And the drone technology is another aspect of that where they've excelled and exceeded, and they're able to produce these at much lower cost, right? Especially with something like this where it's one-time use. You don't need the drone to fly back and refuel and so on, even though the Iranians have that technology as well. But with these kinds of drones, they're able to produce them very cheap. And when you want to win a war, especially a war of attrition, you need to be able to produce things quickly, cheap, and effective, right? I always give the example of the T-34 Russian tank and the German Tiger tank. German Tiger tank, beautiful piece of engineering, right? 88 millimeter cannon. It's ridiculous. All modern tanks look a lot like the Tiger tank. Now the T-34, very cheap, right? And the thing is, though, it's quick to produce. So if you can produce more Russian tanks than the Germans are able to produce Tiger tanks, well, guess who's going to win? The Russians. And the Tiger tank is more beautiful. Yeah, it's very sophisticated and advanced, but the parts are difficult to replace. It takes longer to train the crews to drive and operate the tanks. The first ones especially would break down a lot. So what's the point? The Russian T-34s don't break down like that. T-34s are nothing, in cost compared to that. So, it's in a war of attrition, you need that. And I find this so funny that they're laughing at the Iranian drones. And guess what? The Iranian drones, number one, are effective. They get the job done. They're told to go hit a target, and they hit it within 5 meter. Okay, within 5 meter radius. That's the margin of error. They're that precise. 5 meters, and they don't cost much. And Russians are able to make their own variants. The Americans, they have Global Hawk, they have Reaper, they have all these different surveillance and attack drones. How many do you think the Ukrainians are going to get? How long do you think it trains them to operate it? Honestly, this, for me, the Iranians giving Russia drones, for me, is a very, very important point in the timeline of the Ukraine war. Very important. And for many reasons. Number one, because this is definitely going to help the Russians in a way. And we saw this while the Ukrainians were making advances in Kharkiv and doing this counteroffensive in Kherson. What was the immediate result? They said, oh, Ukraine's winning the war. They took back all this territory. But then at the same time, we saw the Russians start using the Iranian drones. Okay? And then that became a very grim reality. And then after the Crimea Bridge attack, they're using even more of them. Okay, so here's from the New York Times. This is what I was talking about earlier. Ukraine's Air Force said that Russia had fired 43 Iranian-made drones on Monday, but 37 were shot down by air defense systems. The mayor of Kiev said that 28 drones were spotted over the city, resulting in 5 strikes. The Ukrainian Air Force scrambled jets to chase and shoot the drones, while some were shot down by troops who fired into the air. The targets included the headquarters of Ukraine's national energy utility and a municipal heating station. I don't believe this. I don't believe this figure at all, because the videos that I've seen of Ukrainians firing at the Iranian drones, they were doing it with rifles, which basically means that they're shooting at air. Again, just always pay attention to the stories, because they don't add up. They tell you these drones suck, and these drones are being shot down, and then they tell you the drones are devastating the city. They're killing civilians. Well, which one is it? Are they shitty and you're able to shoot them down in droves, or are they actually doing they're doing damage? You can't. These are contradictions. Okay. And these bloated figures, I mean, you can't, honestly, even from the Russian side, I would not trust figures about deaths and casualties. I would not take them at face value, because you're in a war. You don't even know what the actual numbers are. You have estimates. So remember the Saudis and Aramco is the Saudi oil company. During the F1, the Formula One, earlier this year, there was a drone strike, right? So, this was from the Yemenis, from NPR. So Saudi Formula One race will go on despite a Houthi missile attack near the track. This is very embarrassing for the Saudis. They want to be, they want to appear prestigious and, oh, look, we have all these futuristic buildings in Dubai and in Saudi Arabia. We build cities out of the desert. We have so much money. We're these lovely oil sheikhs and we can buy anything and build anything, and come host the 2022, or it was 2020 actually, but because of the pandemic, the 2020 expose over here in Dubai, and here the world's first flying car, the Formula One Grand Prix. They want to gain a lot of prestige on the international stage. They want to look good. And this was embarrassing as hell, because while the Formula One race is going on, you got a goddamn drone from Yemen, all the way from Yemen, that hits the oil. When we're talking about the oil, Aramco, oil is the belly, is the belly of the Saudi economy. That's where they get all their money from. They got nothing but oil. So that was extraordinarily embarrassing. And what did everybody say? It's an Iranian drone, right? Every time the Houthis, the Yemenis, are able to kick the Saudis' butt, which is a lot these days, they're winning the war, doesn't mean they have it easy, But every time they do that, they say, oh, look, it's Iran backing them. Iran is behind, whispering over their shoulder. It's Iran. So again, contradictions. The Iranian drones are devastating, but they also suck. That's weird. I've never seen something so devastating suck so bad. What a contradiction, man. And now they're trying to sanction Iran again. So I don't know what they think they're doing, but you guys never sanctioned Canada. You never sanctioned Britain. You never sanctioned Germany, who, by the way, Germany cheated to sell weapons to the Saudis through a legal loophole. They would export them to Italy and then from Italy sell them to the Saudis. So they're still giving them weapons to kill people in Yemen. But, they've done all of these countries, Britain, France, US, UK, they've all sold weapons to the Saudis which they've used to commit genocide. No one sanctioned them for that, right? And now they want to sanction Iran for some drones. They're doing that because the drones work. If they were shitty, they would not bother with sanctions. And if sanctions weren't devastating, they wouldn't use them. They are devastating. So this is their way of punishing Iran. And the protests also, these protests in Iran, riots, right? They've killed, I don't know how many, 2 dozen plus police. And again, I'm not saying people don't have grievances in Iran against their government. Guess what? Every country does. People in every country have grievances with their government. But there's a lot of foreign influence, and it's funny how these protests started right around the same time when Iran gave the Russians drones. You need to understand in international politics, in this domain, a lot of stuff, it goes unsaid, okay? Actions speak louder than words, especially in diplomacy, especially in international relations, and of course, there's nothing diplomatic about this, but this is how they move. You fuck with us, we're going to fuck with you, right? So they perceive Iran giving weapons to the Russians as a threat, and then they go and screw with Iran at home, which they try to do anyway. But the timing is important. It's interesting. I think there's a connection there. I'm not saying it's the only reason, but it's interesting to observe it, right? I find it difficult for Iran to continue to remain in the nuclear deal and to believe the Americans at their, to take their word and believe them that they'll come back in and lift sanctions when they are still slapping Iran with sanctions. The whole nuclear deal is about sanctions relief in exchange for a limited nuclear program. And we're not just seeing no sanctions relief, we're seeing more sanctions, right? So they haven't just left the sanctions that Trump put on Iran, they're adding to them. They keep adding to them. They've added these ones because of the morality police, and now because of the drones. Once again, man, Biden, Trump, it's all the same. All the same. All the same. And I told you this. I told you before he got into office, he's just going to take everything Trump did and just run with it, either keep it or make it worse. All of it. And I don't know why the Iranian government would believe that the Europeans, Because remember, this is Brussels too, huh? This is Brussels too. It's not just New York. It's not just Washington. It's not just the Americans. It's the EU who themselves are in the deal. Remember, the EU is a party to the nuclear deal. This does not bode well. I mean, they're slapping you with sanctions on one side and then pretending they're going to lift sanctions. Nah. I wouldn't trust them 1 second. The only one that's actually stuck with the deal is Iran. Iran has receipts from the IAEA saying that it respected the deal. And what did it get in return? This shit. So you see once again the double standard, how it's okay for the West to sell weapons and give weapons to whoever they want. It's okay for them to have military alliances. It's okay for them to invade countries. It's okay to sanction people, to commit, economic terrorism against other countries, murder them, murder civilians, maim civilians, imprison civilians, kidnap them, torture them. It's okay. All of this is fine. All of this is fine if you're a Western country. But if you're not, we're coming for you.